amidst the glittering debut of his estranged father's architectural marvel. The Carter Tower, Henry Walker, a disgraced architect now a foreman, watched his daughter Louisa's sculpture gleam a stark contrast to his own forgotten dreams. His father, Silas, dismissed the art as sentimental. But as the crowd swelled, a tremor rattled the foundation. A hidden flaw threatened to consume the very monument to Silas's arrogance. Henry, who once swore off building, suddenly realized only his hands and his unique craft could hold back the collapse. Henry Walker, a man of 38 years, moved through the construction site with a quiet authority that belied his current station. Dust coated his hard hat and work boots, clinging to the worn fabric of his denim jacket. His hands, broad and calloused from years of physical labor, nevertheless possessed a delicate precision as he gestured to Elias, his loyal colleague, about the placement of a steel beam. Elias, a younger man with an earnest face, nodded, understanding the unspoken nuances of Henry's directions. Henry's focus was intense, his gaze capable of dissecting the very bones of the structure around them. A skill born not just of experience, but of a deeper, almost intuitive understanding of how things fit together, how they stood, and how they might fall. Beneath the grime and the sweat, a different past lay buried. Henry had once been a brilliant architect, an idealist whose designs prioritized craftsmanship, sustainable materials, and artistic vision over the cold calculus of rapid profitability. Those dreams, however, had long since been abandoned, crushed under the weight of a professional setback and a personal tragedy that had reshaped his life. Now, he was a foreman, a worker among workers, his ambition channeled into ensuring the safety and quality of the foundations laid by others. Yet, a certain melancholy lingered in his eyes, a silent testament to the path not taken, the potential unrealized. On his battered toolbox, a worn, framed photograph of his daughter, Louisa, a girl of 12, offered a solitary beacon of warmth and purpose in his otherwise demanding existence. She was his anchor, the one pure reason he pushed himself each day. Louisa, true to her father's creative spirit, was at home in their small, lived-in apartment. Her brow furrowed in concentration. The air smelled faintly of solder and metal as she meticulously welded an intricate, abstract sculpture. It was a delicate piece, a tangle of reclaimed wires and polished scrap metal, each curve and angle precise, echoing the hidden artistry of her father's own hands. Her dark hair, often escaping its ponytail, framed a face intent on her work. When Henry arrived home, hours later, bone-tired and smelling of concrete and steel, his exhaustion seemed to melt away the moment he saw her. He shed his jacket, washed his hands, and they shared a simple, warm meal of pasta and vegetables. Their conversation revolved around Louisa's sculpture, the challenges she faced, and the solutions she imagined, a shared language of creation that bound them together. Miles away, the Carter Tower pierced the city skyline, a monument of glass and steel. It was the latest masterpiece from Carter Industries, the architectural firm of Henry's estranged father, Silas Carter. Sleek, formidable, and impossibly tall, it radiated an aura of unyielding wealth and power. On a prominent morning news program, Alexandra, Silas's ambitious lead architect, a woman in her 30s with an immaculately tailored suit and an even more immaculate presentation, spoke with practiced confidence. She lauded the tower's groundbreaking design, praising Silas's visionary leadership. Every word was precise, every gesture controlled, embodying a corporate success built on efficiency and a certain unyielding drive. The contrast with Henry's world of grit and honest labor could not have been starker. A formal invitation arrived in Henry's mail. Thick ivory cardstock announcing the grand opening of the Carter Tower and an exclusive art exhibition featuring promising young artists. To Henry's surprise, and Louisa's delight, her name was listed among the selected artists. He recognized the stark, stylized logo of Carter Industries on the invitation. A cold knot forming in his stomach. A quick, sharp memory flashed through Henry's mind a heated argument years ago. Silas's booming voice, disapproving of Henry's radical, unprofitable architectural concepts. Silas had disowned him, cutting ties when Henry chose a path that prioritized craftsmanship and unique, unconventional materials over the predictable, high-volume projects that fueled Carter Industries. Silas had seen Henry's artistic integrity as a naive, failing idealism. The night of the exhibition arrived, a dazzling spectacle of opulence and superficiality. Henry, uncomfortable in his only suit, held Louisa's hand as they walked through the opulent lobby of the Carter Tower. The space had been transformed into a gleaming art gallery, filled with the city's elite. Louisa's intricate metal sculptures, small but commanding, were indeed displayed among other student works. Her face, usually so reserved, glowed with unbridled pride. Then, Silas Carter, a man in his 60s, with a shock of silver hair and an imperious bearing, made a grand entrance, drawing all eyes. He moved among the art, radiating an almost visible self-importance. He paused at Louisa's sculpture, unaware it was his granddaughter's creation, and with a dismissive wave of his hand, coldly critiqued it as overly sentimental, lacking commercial viability, and a frivolous use of material. Henry felt a hot flush of shame, not for himself, but for Louisa, who visibly flinched. He tightened his grip on her hand, trying to shield her from the sting of his grandfather's cruel words. Alexandra, standing nearby, offered a subtle nod of agreement to Silas's assessment, her gaze meeting Henry's with a faint, almost pitying glance, further reinforcing his outsider status and her unquestioning alignment with corporate values. As Silas launched into a pompous opening speech, brimming with self-congratulation, Henry leaned against a seemingly decorative wall panel, a part of the building's core structure. He felt it, then, a barely perceptible tremor, a subtle vibration that rippled through the steel. His expert eye instinctively scanned the surface, catching a hairline fissure, barely visible to the naked eye, propagating across the polished metal. He initially dismissed it, hoping it was merely cosmetic, a superficial imperfection. Yet, across the crowded room, old George, a construction veteran with decades of wisdom etched into his face, caught Henry's eye. A knowing, concerned look passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of something amiss. Meanwhile, Clinton, Silas's project manager, a man in his 40s with a perpetually slicked-back hairstyle and an expensive suit, looked visibly agitated. He kept checking his phone, his thumb flying across the screen, then whispering urgently into it, arguing about unforeseen delays and cost overruns. The tremor grew stronger. The high society guests, oblivious to the subtle shifts in the building's foundational rhythm, continued to mingle, clinking glasses and exchanging polite, meaningless conversation. Henry, however, could not shake his growing unease. Every nerve ending seemed to hum with an unsettling awareness. He watched Clinton again, furtively taking another agitated call near a massive, seemingly decorative, structural column on the mezzanine level. Clinton's voice was low but sharp, arguing about minor deviations and getting sign-off on the revised specs. Henry, whose body had become a finely tuned instrument over years of working with steel and concrete, now distinctly felt a faint, persistent, almost rhythmic groan resonating from the lower levels of the building. It was a deep, unsettling sound, a lament of stressed materials, a language only a true craftsman, one intimately familiar with the integrity of building materials, could decipher. Louisa, still stung by her grandfather's harsh words, drifted back to her sculpture. She traced a finger along its cool, metallic surface, seeking comfort in its familiar form. As she did, the delicate balance of her abstract creation subtly shifted, almost imperceptibly, its equilibrium disturbed by the now more pronounced vibrations rippling through the floor. The intricate metal pieces of her art seemed to tremble, a fragile beauty reflecting a deeper, more fragile truth about the monument in which it stood. Suddenly, with a jarring thud that momentarily silenced the jazz music, the Carter Tower was plunged into a partial power blackout. Lights flickered violently. Then half the lobby went dark, replaced by the sickly, intermittent yellow glow of emergency lighting. A low, guttural grinding sound, like massive gears tearing against each other, reverberated from the building's deepest core. For a beat, a collective hush fell over the crowd. Then immediate, frantic panic erupted among the high-profile guests. Shrieks and shouts filled the air as people stumbled in the sudden gloom. Alexandra, who had initially attempted to maintain a facade of calm, her voice clear and authoritative, found her composure cracking as the grim reality of the situation hit. Her eyes darted around, searching for the source of the terrible sound. In a terrifying, undeniable moment, a large, ragged crack visibly propagated across a critical load-bearing column in the lobby, precisely where Henry had noticed the initial hairline fissure. The structural integrity of the tower was failing. Simultaneously, alarms blared a piercing, metallic shriek, then were abruptly, eerily silenced. It was a clear, desperate act of sabotage by Clinton, attempting to contain the chaos and prevent mass panic, but only succeeding in amplifying the terror. Alexandra, watching the very structure she had helped design begin to collapse, was utterly horrified. She stared at the crack, recognizing its distinct pattern, a grim realization dawning that this was not merely a minor incident but a fundamental, catastrophic structural failure. Across the room, Clinton, his face pale with a mix of fear and desperation, began barking frantic orders into his phone, directing security teams to block information and prevent anyone from accessing the lower floors, feverishly attempting to control the unfolding narrative of disaster. Henry, however, saw beyond the panic and the cover-up. He stared at the unique pattern of the stress fracture, a pattern he had meticulously studied years ago. He immediately identified it. This was no random design flaw. It was a signature structural weakness directly linked to an unconventional, highly experimental material that Silas had insisted on using years ago for the tower's foundation, overriding Henry's vehement warnings. Henry had argued then that the compound possessed an inherent, long-term instability that would inevitably lead to catastrophic failure under prolonged stress. His immediate, primal concern, however, was not for the building, but for Louisa. He spotted her trapped with a group of other terrified children and guests near a section of the art gallery that was beginning to creak ominously, far from the main exit, its glass walls threatening to shatter. Silas, initially consumed by a furious rage at the chaos and the potential ruin of his reputation, continued to attempt to deflect blame. His face, usually so composed, was contorted with disbelief and fear, yet he was forced to confront the undeniable, terrifying truth. His architectural masterpiece, the crowning glory of his career, was catastrophically failing. His team of hand-picked engineers, usually so confident, now looked shaken, struggling to comprehend the complex, unusual nature of the failure. Their theoretical knowledge was failing them. Alexandra, observing Henry's unnerving calm amidst the pandemonium, his precise, almost surgical assessment of the escalating damage, finally approached him, desperation etched on her face in that moment of crisis. She saw past his foreman's uniform and the grime of his physical labor. She recognized the sharp, intuitive mind of a master builder, a man whose hands knew the secrets of the stone, the steel, the very earth beneath them. A profound reevaluation of Henry and of her own rigid corporate values began to take root within her, with the tower groaning ominously, each creak and shudder echoing the relentless march of time. Henry stood firm. He refused to lift a finger, to offer his unique expertise, unless his conditions were met absolute authority over the entire operation. Immediate access to all original blueprints, including the disowned alternative designs Silas had buried for years in total, unflinching transparency regarding the true cause of the flaw. Silas, his empire crumbling around him, initially resisted, his instinct to protect corporate reputation clashing violently with the undeniable reality of collapsing steel and screaming civilians. But Alexandra, seeing Henry as the only path to saving lives, risked her burgeoning career to vehemently support his demands. Her voice, usually so controlled, trembled with urgency as she vouched for his unparalleled understanding of the building's secrets. She had seen it in his eyes, in the way his hands moved, in his unflappable calm, working feverishly with Alexandra. Henry retrieved his old, hand-drawn blueprints, carefully preserved relics of a discarded past. He spread them out alongside Silas's official digital plans, the stark contrast between his meticulous, hand-rendered visions and the crisp, impersonal computer models evident, with a grim certainty. He quickly discovered the shocking, devastating truth. Clinton, driven by greed and a ruthless desire for profit, had deliberately substituted a cheaper, weaker compound in a critical load-bearing joint. It was the exact unconventional material Henry had vehemently critiqued years ago, warning Silas of its inherent instability and long-term risks. Old George, the construction veteran Henry worked with, his face grim, confirmed Henry's past, ignored warnings about Clinton's relentless cost-cutting measures, citing similar shortcuts on various other projects that had narrowly avoided disaster. Henry's once dismissed architectural principles, his warnings about the dangers of compromising craftsmanship for profit, were now powerfully vindicated. Clinton's systemic fraud and direct sabotage were laid bare, his actions directly endangering the very tower he had claimed to manage. Henry, now with absolute command, assumed control of the rescue. He moved through the fractured building with a quiet, unflinching authority, directing his construction crew, led by the steadfast Elias. Their intimate knowledge of the building's hidden guts, its access points, its emergency shafts, its forgotten passages, became an invaluable asset. Henry devised an audacious, intricately detailed plan to stabilize the failing core, requiring precise, manual reinforcement using custom-fabricated components in extremely dangerous, confined spaces within the tower's belly. The plan was a testament to his deep, intuitive understanding of structural load transfer, a physical poetry of physics and craft. Alexandra, working directly under Henry's command, moved with a newfound humility. She used her refined architectural knowledge to coordinate external resources, calculate load stresses on the fly, and manage the precise flow of emergency materials. Learning from Henry's practical genius, her initial arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a profound respect for the man who understood not just the abstract designs, but the living, breathing reality of the building itself. The stakes reached their terrifying zenith when a critical section of the art gallery, where Louisa and a group of terrified children were trapped, began to audibly groan. The floor beneath them visibly sagged, sending ominous showers of dust and debris raining down. Henry, his heart a raw knot of fear and determination, had to orchestrate the building's stabilization while simultaneously directing their perilous extraction. In a critical, heart-stopping moment, Louisa's unique art, specifically her abstract metal sculpture, or perhaps a knowledge she possessed of the exhibition layout, provided an unexpected clue or an emotional anchor that helped Henry or his crew find a hidden path to safety. His fierce, paternal love for Louisa pushed him beyond all physical and mental limits, transforming him into a true hero in the midst of the escalating chaos. Clinton, his face a mask of panicked rage, made a desperate attempt to obstruct Henry's vital efforts. He tried to shut down critical equipment, to block access to key structural areas, anything to bury his culpability deeper beneath the rubble. But Henry, his eyes blazing with a righteous fury, would not be stopped, supported by the steadfast Elias and the grizzled George. Henry physically confronted Clinton, their combined integrity and raw strength overwhelming the project manager's desperate resistance. Henry neutralized Clinton, securing crucial access points and ensuring the continuation of the rescue operation. The corrupt antagonist was not merely exposed through blueprints and logs, he was physically overcome, brought down by the very craftsmen he had sought to exploit. A profound vindication for Henry and his loyal crew. As the dust settled, coating everything in a fine, ghostly layer, the Carter Tower, though wounded, stood. All trapped lives were saved. Henry and his exhausted, grime-streaked crew emerged from the building's maw, met by a cacophony of cheers and profound relief from the anxious crowd. Silas, publicly humbled and visibly shaken, his usual imperious composure shattered, faced a phalanx of hungry reporters. He issued a stark, honest statement, his voice raw but resolute, acknowledging the systemic failures, Clinton's calculated fraud, and, crucially, confessing his past mistakes and the unjust disowning of his son, Henry. It was an act of profound, public honesty, a testament to his shattered arrogance and the faint glimmer of redemption that began to shine through. News reports dominated every screen in the city, detailing the heroic actions of Henry Walker, highlighting his profound expertise in structural engineering, and exposing Clinton Archer's corporate fraud and systematic corruption. Silas's past cover-ups and his callous dismissal of his son's warnings were also brought to light. Reshaping the public narrative. Alexandra, standing before cameras with a newfound humility, gave an emotional, heartfelt interview. Her voice, once so polished, now trembled with genuine emotion as she praised Henry's unparalleled integrity and skill, admitting her own previous misjudgment and narrow-mindedness. She credited Henry not only with saving the tower, but with redefining her entire perspective on architecture and ethical leadership, advocating for a new paradigm where human life and honest craftsmanship were paramount. Silas, in an unprecedented move, announced a complete overhaul of Carter Industries' construction and safety protocols in a public ceremony. He appointed Henry to a newly created, powerful department, the Division of Structural Integrity and Ethical Craftsmanship, granting him full executive authority to implement his philosophy of honest construction and long-term building resilience across all future projects. Louisa's art, now inextricably linked to the dramatic story of the tower's crisis and Henry's heroic rescue, gained immense critical and public appreciation. Her intricate metal sculptures, once dismissed as sentimental, were now reinstalled in the renovated lobby of the tower, gleaming under new lights, symbolizing beauty born from raw material, honest construction, and the triumph of truth. In a quiet, private moment, far from the glare of cameras, Silas approached Henry. His voice, usually so resonant with authority, was now soft, tinged with genuine remorse. He offered a profound, heartfelt apology for his past cruelty, for dismissing Henry's vision, and for the years of pain he had caused. Henry, with Louisa silently by his side, accepted the apology. It was not a superficial act, but a genuine step towards healing the deep family wound, a fragile but sincere beginning, driven by the hope of building a new, honest relationship between father and son. The years of estrangement had ended, replaced by a quiet understanding and the unspoken promise of a future built on shared respect. Henry, now respected and empowered, worked closely with Alexandra, who had chosen to remain at Carter Industries, her ambition now tempered with humility and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they began to redesign and reinforce sections of the tower, incorporating Henry's philosophy of honest architecture and sustainable construction. The final scene showed Henry, in practical, clean work clothes, overseeing a new construction project, perhaps a community center or a renovation of a forgotten landmark, his hands moving with the familiar grace of a master craftsman. This time, Silas looked on, respectful and learning, no longer dictating but observing with genuine interest, his presence a silent testament to his profound change. Louisa's sculpture stood prominently in the renovated lobby of the Carter Tower, a permanent symbol of resilience, truth, and the enduring power of genuine craft. Henry had found his rightful place, his values vindicated and his family connections rebuilt. Alexandra now embodied a transformed corporate culture, and the narrative closed on the quiet triumph of integrity and rekindled familial bonds. Henry realized that building a legacy was not about erecting the tallest towers, but about constructing lives built on strong, honest foundations. Underdog.